Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Hayley Spira-Bauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. I am so incredibly honored and excited for our next guest. We have Dr. David Lawrence, the Superintendent of Dayton Public Schools, joining us here today. Welcome, David.
Hey, Hayley, it's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. I feel like my love of Dayton comes from never having been there, but knowing some great people who were born and work in Dayton. And now I get to interview you. So cue my over enthusiastic questions starting now.
We'll take it.
You are born and bred in Dayton, Ohio. Can you tell everybody, how did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself?
Well, there's a hospital around the corner from here called Miami Valley. I was born there in 1966, about 60 years ago. So that's actually how it all started. Well, probably before then, but anyway. But yeah, and so I matriculated through school, graduating from Paul Laurence Dunbar High School, which is probably the most prominent. No, I'm not just saying this because I'm an alumni. It's Paul Laurence Dunbar. Everybody knows he's a worldwide famous poet. It's a school that has the largest and most active alumni. It's the school here in Dayton. And so had a chance to graduate from there and then matriculate to the University of Cincinnati to play a couple of sports, track and football, and graduate with finance and accounting. And then I've told this story once before, and I'm going to tell it again quickly. My best friend was the president of Chase Bank when he ended his career. We were both bankers early on, and we worked out quite frequently, and we were in the steam room. He says, "Man, doesn't seem like you really like this thing called banking." I'm like, "It's okay. Like, we went to school to do this work. But no, it's not as exciting as I thought." He said, "I'm running for school board. Why don't you think about being a teacher?" I go back to school for about a year. I get a teacher's certificate. I become a middle school and high school math teacher for 10 years. And then the rest is history. Principal, assistant principal, chief academic officer, director of mathematics, blah, 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 all the way to superintendency. So it started in a steam room where the temperature was about 165 degrees. That's how I started.
You're telling such an interesting anecdote from your life that really speaks volumes to the power of people who see and know us as individuals.
Mhm.
And so often these stories are about teachers who see and know us. But I love that you're sharing it came from a friend who clearly, as evidenced by running for school board, is also passionate about education and
Yeah.
saw a spark in you.
Yeah, his mother was a teacher for 30 years. His father was a teacher in the public school system. His father was a teacher for 35 years at the university level, Wilberforce, which is the oldest and first predominantly Black university, or HBCU as they're called. So he came from a family of educators, and he and I, again, we shared a locker in high school, so we talked every day, shared the same subject matter in college. We talked in college. We continue to be just thick as thieves. To this day, we talk every day, typically before 8 o'clock. And so this is a guy who knew me. He knew I was not necessarily happy. I was going to do the job, going to come to work, going to be kind of skillful at what I do, but it wasn't a passion of mine. So yeah, I have to thank Joey Williams for that.
That's really beautiful. That sounds like an incredible friendship and also has proven to be a great benefit to your community. I mean, you've served as a teacher, a principal, a business manager, and now a superintendent, which is a pretty remarkable journey in just about every seat in the house. What moment or experience led you to say, I want to lead at the district level?
Uh, I was teaching. There was no moment. Actually, someone told me about that. Much like Joey saw something. There was a superintendent. His name is Percy Mack. He's one of the most beloved superintendents around. He was very nice. He always wore a really nice blue suit with really shiny shoes, and he would come to school buildings with his entourage and peek in classrooms and walk around and go to lunchrooms. He was really nice and very visible. And I'll come back to that later. And so I was teaching on a Saturday morning, what we call the Ohio Graduate Test, the mathematics portion. I was preparing graduating seniors to take and pass the test so they can march across the aisle and say, "Here's my degree." And he was walking through there on Saturday. Now, this day he didn't have on a blue suit. He had on a button-up shirt and some slacks, but he peeked in and said, "Who's this guy here teaching kids on a Saturday?" And then he created a cohort of folks to go back to get their administrative license, and he put me in it. And then he sent me to a school, our premier school, to learn how to be a principal, Stiver School for the Arts. And then he made me a principal at our most difficult high school. He made all that happen. So I wasn't necessarily looking to do this, but he triggered all that. And then once I became a principal, I thought, well, if I can do this, if I can run one school, maybe I can run them all.
Just so easy, such a logical path. No, like a testament to someone seeing potential in you and nurturing you through the process. You know, in your first year or your short time as an interim superintendent, you moved the needle on third grade reading scores and cut chronic absenteeism. And we talk in education about levers. What levers did you pull to affect that change so quickly? And how do you use those levers today, now that you're in the seat for the long haul, to affect change across Dayton?
I'm going to go back to that blue suit, Dr. Mack, and I talked to you
Mm.
about how visible he was and he had an entourage.
Yes.
Well, I took pieces of that, and there's a book about management called Walking Around While You're Leading. And it essentially says you should walk around wherever you are, the office building, the plant manager. You should always walk around wherever you're leading and talk to people and monitor situations and deal with crises before they start and deal with crises that are there. So
Mm.
I took the blue suit and Dr. Mack and the entourage, and I just got rid of the entourage. And my suit isn't blue. I typically wear a suit every day, but it's not blue.
Yeah.
But I go to buildings, even a lot more than Dr. Mack did. In the last 2 years, I have over 1,000 badge swipes. So I average 4 to 5 school buildings per day. Uh,
Wow.
while I'm there, I notice things and I pick up the phone to call the people who work with me to help make change. And we operate and deal with things in real time. So to answer your question, one of the levers is addressing things as you see them and deal with them. Oftentimes, as leaders, we get I don't want to say this. The information comes to us and it's filtered through the people who report to us, and not unknowingly. Like actually, my people don't do this, but research says unknowingly, it's filtered and it's filtered in a way that's positive.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to protect the leader from hearing about bad things, or it comes to you in really negative spaces to create a negative culture and not through the lens of consistent or continuous improvement. So I just go out myself and look with my own eyeballs. I mean, I've been a teacher, principal, I've worked with custodians, nutrition services, I've cut the grass, CDL driven buses. So I know exactly what's supposed to happen. So I just go to schools and look. And when it's not happening, I call people and say, "Hey, we should fix this." Or I send notes and emails and thank you cards that say things are great.
Mm.
And people respond to that. They know someone, not just someone's looking, the superintendent's looking.
Yeah, I have a friend who's still in the classroom where I live on Long Island, and she was talking about recently how one of the assistant superintendents came to their curriculum and instruction day where they were building the next year's curriculum installment and revising and planning. And the assistant superintendent sat down next to them and like brainstormed with them, asked questions of them, gave praise to them from what she'd observed throughout the year. And my friend stated to me that that made more of a difference in her belief system in the leadership than any single other message that was ever sent to her, was the leader's physical presence and noticings and observations in the work that requires you to roll up your sleeves.
That is, I think, it's just you can have lots of initiatives, and we'll talk about them. You should have systems and structures and systems and frameworks that the whole operation works from. You should have very clear policy that the whole operation defaults to when there's a question about should we do something or not. All of these things are best practices and they're written about a lot. But what you can't get away from is the idea that the zeitgeist of the organization is driven through the leader, right? And when I have people who come and visit with me, so my superintendent coach lives in Dallas. I'm getting ready to go see him in a couple of days. Dr. Henna Hissel, two-time superintendent of Dallas ISD. And when he comes and spends time here, he goes, man, like, do you know everybody? He said, so the guys that cut the grass, they shake your hand and hug you. The people who put the fruit out and have lunch and breakfast ready, he said they actually hug and kiss you. He said, this
Yeah.
is crazy, man. He said, you know all the SROs, you know the teachers, and I don't know all the teachers, but anyway. But you know, this idea that you're a visible person that's human and can be touched, you can't beat it.
It's really powerful. You know, you talk about processes and systems. There are a few that you've established that are kind of earmarked or hallmarked as Dayton Public Schools, something that you're really proud of, you've written about often, as you said. Can you talk to me about the systems or processes that really stand out to you as being most impactful?
I think the two that really jump off the page for me are first is that most school systems and most organizations, business organizations, they have something called a strategic plan. Um, I don't say this often. I still use my PhD. I still research lots of things, and I still write for empirical journals and articles. So I'm still a practicing practitioner in terms of research and high level research. And so what we know is we know that almost 70% of most employees in most organizations cannot recite the mission and vision statement verbatim. This we know. And then the number goes up from there when you ask them to give a summary of the strategic plan, right? So these are things that are on binders and pieces of paper that are in bookshelves and cases in executives' office and the mid-level executives and junior executives, and they're not brought out often and they're not a lived part of the organization. So I decided to scrap that. We don't have a strategic plan. Nope. Mm-mm. We have an academic action plan, and the language is very important. Academic, that's school. Action, that means do the work, and plan. We go check on the plan every day. So it's an 18-month plan that's revised every 6 months to say, where are we? And actually, it's visited every day, but it's revised every 3 to 6 months to find out where we are in terms of moving outcomes for children. And if we're not, we need to make some changes. I would suggest that if you're in the water swimming and you're drowning, we want to make a change now. We don't want to wait till you drown. So that academic action plan, I think, is different. Even when I explain it to other superintendents, they kind of shake their head like you are, like, okay. And then I even quiz them, like, hey man, tell me about your academic action, I mean, your strategic plan that you wrote with all those people, and they know I'm teasing them, and most of them, half of them don't know it either. So we dispel or discard with things that, quite frankly, are not useful, that we know through research. The other thing we know is that school is boring. I mentioned earlier that I was born in 1966. So if you were doing school the same exact way you were doing it when I was a child, that's not going to work. We know the average person's attention span is 21 minutes or less, and that's pushing it. We have these tools that are in front of us, like phones, and our information is immediate, quick, and we want turnover. Well, you have to create a space for that for children. So our Forward Next Generation Learning Network means we have created almost 20 to 25 pathways that are about what kids want to do. And we've asked the community, what do you think they want to do? We had kids, what do they think we want to do? We've had business owners, universities. It was a 2-year process led by our Associate Superintendent, Lisa G. Minor, and we came up with lots of different pathways that kids are interested in. And so that's how you increase attendance. You make school interesting. That's how you increase kids' engagement. You make school interesting. And so we're doing school in a very different way than many of my predecessors.
Okay, I have so many thoughts here. First of all, I love your point about the strategic plan often becomes this carefully thought out, beautiful document that kind of sits behind glass for a school year and gets revisited upon its renewal and refreshment. Like that feels so out of touch to me. And I've never thought about what is the alternative. So, like, I appreciate you naming that here, that a more data driven, regularly revisited academically driven, not document, but living material is what drives the community forward.
Mhm.
That feels very fresh and different to me.
I love that you said a living document because that's what it is. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily something that I expect people to memorize because there are aspects of it that change.
Right.
And there's a third component that it's not listed third because it's last. It's just how I thought about it today. We spent a lot of time the summer before I started 3 years ago now, asking ourselves about guiding principles. Like, what are these things these guiding principles we're going to use to drive the organizational behavior? And we tweaked them just a little bit, but it began with research around what are guiding principles. And so currently we have something called the 5 C's. We know that mnemonics catch people.
They stick.
Yeah, they stick. That's just where we are, right? And so we have 5 fingers, 5 toes on each hand. C's, and and that term C, so customer service is important. We know that students are leaving public schools not because of report cards, which are reported in bad schools. They're leaving overwhelmingly because how they've been treated. We've had an over increase in 1,000 kids since I've been a superintendent, which is highly unusual in this world where public schools are bleeding kids.
Literally every day, all I am talking about with leaders right now is what their attrition looks like, how their budgets are impacted, what they're doing to attract students to come back. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very unusual.
So, and I think customer service is one of the reasons that we've been able to do that because people want to feel like they're part of the team, feel like they're part of DPS, and they don't want to be treated as second class citizens. And we have to remember that many of our students, they have working class parents who
Mhm.
may not have degrees, and you have all these people with degrees and secondary degrees and terminal degrees who are having these interactions with them. And if they at all feel slighted or feel like they're being made small, then the level of trust is gone and their ability to leave to go somewhere else is easy. So we have a customer service component that I think is like really, really important. And then when the three that kind of go together to me are commitment, collaboration, and communication.
Mm,
Typically, when I find something that's gone wrong, it just happened today in a meeting. It was really around communication and collaboration.
yeah.
I mean, almost everything that I go, how'd that happen? It's a breakdown in one of those three things, right?
Mhm.
In fact, I was guilty this morning. I was the person that didn't communicate something that was very important, and I, of course, made sure the rest of the team knew that I'm going to fix it.
Sure.
So I think those three are kind of blended together. So there's customer service, like this giant umbrella, and then those three are together. And there's like kind of like a little basin or pan underneath it that's like an umbrella that is culture. That if
Yes.
you do all of those things, you'll create a positive culture. And so we have, like at the senior level, we have very little, if any, turnover at all. So there's a culture where directors stay, executive directors stay, assistant superintendents stay, chiefs of academics stay. We have not had to replace anyone. We've had to redirect and reassign a couple of people, but we've not lost anybody at the senior level. This will be our fourth year together. And so I think that speaks to how we, especially at the highest level, how we treat people. And I know that this is a very difficult time out there financially, and I'm going to say this, I'm not the person that did it. The Board of Education and I agreed on a contract, and at the time when we were negotiating, they said, "Hey, we'll pay you X amount of salary, but we'll pay you also a bonus for employee retention." Now, that was their way of saying, hey, we'll give you an opportunity to earn more money, but it's tied to a metric, a KPI, key performance indicator. And I was like, well, I don't really need that, but if you all say so, no problem. And so every year I've been a superintendent, they've had to write this check for employee retention because we don't lose a lot of people like we used to. So I just think that culture is really important. And those 5 C's, here's how I know they're working. because I walk around and ask people about them. But more importantly, on the rare occasion that a complaint gets all the way back to me, it's an email, and it'll be from someone in the community, or like a teacher or a custodian or a bus driver, and it'll go, Dr. Lawrence, you and your team have violated one of the five C's. You should have communicated such and such and such and such, right? Or this culture is terrible, when I get a complaint. That tells me something, that the people who are upset or frustrated, they're actually using the guiding principles that we have out there to direct me to say, fix it. That tells me that people are listening and that they know what they are.
Okay, I need to focus on this particular one and tie it back to something you stated earlier. So, customer service to me is fascinating. It's not one you often see as like a guiding principle in a school district or community. And you also named that school is boring. This is a drum that I beat all the time on the podcast, in my newsletter, in my regular life. I think we've lost our way in many cases with how to bring school to life for kids and how to encourage an internal capital M motivation in children's lives that helps them see opportunities and choice in the future. I wouldn't say that this means like we failed children as a society, but
Mhm.
I can think of many examples in my own children's education, in the education that I've led and the schools that I've taught in. But I believe there are many bright spots that can serve as guiding lights to bring us forward. So, what do you think? Like, if you could double click on the idea about how Dayton is making school more appealing, you highlighted a few initiatives. Can you paint a picture for us? What does it sound like, look like, feel like in one of your schools where it's going really well?
So I'm going to start with one of the first things I did, and some things are well thought out and well planned. Others, because you're like an athlete, right? They don't
Mm.
always, it's not always by the book, so to speak, by the fundamentals of whatever sport you're in. Sometimes you have a feel for things. So when I was first starting, because I had worked in transportation as the business manager, and I knew now about transportation, I said, hey, I want to see a 200% increase in the number of field trips and at the elementary level. And I don't care where you go. I know we have enough drivers, enough buses. And I also knew it created overtime and extra a salary for bus drivers. I said, I want to see buses rolling every day going somewhere. And that first year, we had a 400% increase over the year before I was here in trips. And what that looked like was it also increased the attendance. Because you know what kids do when they think they're going on a trip? They come to school
Yeah, they sure do.
because they want to get on the bus for the field trip.
Hmm.
And I learned that from a previous district where I was an elementary principal, and the third graders, we had a swimming camp for them during the winter, well, late winter, February. And we noticed that during that month, not one third grader missed a day of school. Swimming was every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they would go to the Y for 45 minutes to learn how to swim, and no one missed school. We're like, that's odd, and actually, it's not. They were going to be there for the activity. So one way it looks is that kids know that their year is going to be full of activities, guaranteed experiences that they want to be at. So that's writ large. In particular, because I can see it, not the building, but it's right a couple streets over, is our flagship David H. Ponitz, our flagship career technology school. And when you walk in there, you see kids working on mannequins, doing the beauticians. You see dentistry. You see automotive. You see we have they're not like my PIO department. They're not as good as that yet. But we do have a media class there where kids work on media. You see all types of career path phlebotomy. You see career pathways, construction, little house construction. You see all type of career pathways that are connected to things that kids want to do. And coincidentally, that's the school where we always have a waiting list. When I talk to eighth graders and I go to lunch with the middle schools and say, where you want to go to school? I want to go to Ponitz. Ponitz. Everyone wants to go to David H. Ponitz. And that's because we tie school in with your career interests. So to me, that's what it looks like. They also have competitions that Ponitz competes in, and they win awards nationally against other career tech schools.
I have done recently a deep dive on CTE for a lot of reasons, but I hosted an episode of a podcast with a CTE superintendent from Pennsylvania, and I
Mm.
learned some really interesting stats about graduation rates being higher, increased outcomes, and increase in two-year college enrollments. Waitlists are at record levels. Schools are closing programs due to low enrollment, but CTE is having massive enrollment, like you just stated, where there are wait lists. And New York Times recently identified electricians and HVAC technicians as the new millionaire class. I know so little about CTE from my own school-based experience and from my own education growing up, but it has become my most recent obsession. So I'm glad you touched on it because I predict that you, Dayton, will not be alone in seeing rising rates of enrollment if they're not already seeing them, rising need for CTE certified teachers with the proper credentials, and rising opportunities for kids to have viable pathways to earn income upon graduation, which will have all the intended effects of increasing attendance, graduation, engagement. I think it is a beautiful, beautiful area to look at in the future of K-12 education.
It makes school fun for the administrators too, because now they're not pigeonholing kids into just math, just science, and just language arts. We've also increased exponentially our number of advanced placement courses. So we're making two statements. One, we want you to have a career pathway, and two, we haven't given up on college either. And I think for me as a superintendent, it's really fun. I have my favorite pathways. I don't know that I can tell the principals that, but one of them is exercise physiology,
They might hear it on this episode, just so you know.
exercise science, and I hope they do hear it actually. And I go to Meadowdale, and I go there, and there's a day that I typically don't wear a shirt and tie or suit. That's Friday. That's our dress down day for the district.
Yes.
And I typically go there on that day, and I go in there and I lift a few weights with the kids. And I always have fun getting a little mini workout in. But what I noticed is that the last time I was there at the end of the year, they were participating in an exercise physiology event, shall we say competition. I think it was at Sinclair. And is that where it was? I think it was at Sinclair. Yeah, I think it was at Sinclair, but they were competing in an event where you had to ask a hypothetical question about exercise physiology and link it back to nutrition science. So just being in that classroom, working out a little bit with the kids, and then having them show me their presentations that day, two kids did. That's one of my favorite places to go during the day on Friday. And so it makes school fun for even the people like me whose job it is to drive around to see schools and kids.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I didn't do a little bit of a full disclosure moment at the top of the podcast. But Dayton Public Schools is a partner of Full Mind, who now is home to Elevate K-12. And one of the reasons that I was especially eager to talk to you today is because I believe that innovation is often born of necessity. In the case of Dayton Public Schools, they've been partnering with Full Mind and Elevate for a couple of years to support with teacher vacancies across the district.
Mhm.
Can you talk about how you first thought about this idea of remote virtual instruction, live instruction, and how you think about it now and what has caused you to change your opinion on that front?
You know, I am in some ways a very deliberate person when it comes to personnel and, shall we say, leadership development and crisis amongst and between personnel. I'm rather deliberate.
Mm,
When it comes to some things around systems, structures, and immediate needs for kids, I'm not as nearly as deliberate. I react much faster.
mm,
So I've been a chief of schools before, meaning I'd supervised schools, 22 of them. And I was a content level expert as a math teacher. And I would go into math classes and I noticed that the content was being delivered incorrectly by either A, a long-term sub reserve teacher, and or B, a teacher who may not have had the content level depth and did not continue to learn in terms of mathematics. So you might have been middle school certified, which took you up to Algebra 1, but we might have had you teaching geometry, pre-calc, trig, which is outside the bandwidth. Not that you couldn't and that you shouldn't learn. And so I became concerned knowing that mathematics was a gateway class in high school and especially
mm,
in college as well, depending on your major. And I was at a meeting at the local ESC, and Jen actually was presenting. And what part of the presentation was that, look, we have these teachers who are content level experts. And I thought to myself, if I can get content level experts in front of kids who haven't had, in some cases, math teachers for 1, 2, 3 years in a row, then that'll be a step forward. We have to immediately try this. I think that was actually my first year. This is might be the third year we're going into Elevate K-12, and so or fourth. So I immediately responded. That local ESC, they hold a certain amount of dollars for each district because ours is the largest district. We had a couple $100,000, and I thought it was best to spend that almost immediately, ASAP, to try this. And it's been a wonderful relationship and it's worked.
I came to learn about the incredible partnership by way of reading the research on Elevate's website when they were still a competitor to Fullmind. Whereas now we are one merged organization, bringing the best of both organizations together. I remember seeing the outcomes that were posted on the district success stories portion of their website and thinking, well, that's really beautiful. I am sad that we're not serving this community, but so happy that they're finding success with live instruction virtually, even if it's not with us. And
Mhm.
so now I get to be here and be excited to be part of that story and part of how the community has made sure to meet the needs of students despite challenges that are nationwide and that are not new, right? Like teacher shortages are not new. They are often impacting communities that are furthest from educational justice in for a variety of reasons. And thus, when we think of innovative solutions and we implement them and have great results, that's a win for everybody.
Mhm. I don't know. I was in St. Louis at a conference, and it was actually really good. And the keynote speaker, he said something, and this is my 30th year, so I've heard a lot of keynote speakers. So I try to pay attention, but it doesn't always work because I've seen a lot. But
Appreciate the honesty there.
yeah, this guy was enthralling. I mean, he was really good.
Yeah.
And he said, there was this moment when he says, if you're on a losing horse, why do you keep getting on that horse? And then he said, and then he showed a picture of a horse that was on the ground. He said, and you can't beat this losing horse into submission and make it a winning horse. It is
Yeah.
a losing horse. He said, get off of it. So all I could think about was, yeah, we were not attracting math and science teachers. That's a losing horse for a lot of school systems right now.
Yeah, it is.
We'd offered bonuses, didn't work. We'd offered extended contracts, didn't work. We called ourselves targeting those at universities, didn't work. So I'm not going to keep riding a losing horse. I'm gonna get off.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
understood.
myself,
Understood.
elevate to K-12. Let's get on. See what happens.
Yeah. So listen, you have to make a decision as a superintendent about who to partner with and why to partner with them. And one of the questions that all my friends who are, I hate saying this, they're like new ed tech founders. I sometimes say baby ed tech founders. I shouldn't say that. That's like really infantilizing. But new ed tech founders will often say, how do you form a great relationship? How do you get a leader to pick you? So I would say for you, David, what would you say are hallmarks of someone you're willing to put trust in and partner with? What attracts you to ed tech companies out there in the space when you're making decisions?
I look for realistic interpretations of how the work will proceed and then how we move forward when we consider barriers or bumps in the proverbial bumps in the road, right? Because it's going to happen, and
Oh yeah.
how we work together to communicate to work through that process, and how flexible is the partner. But for me, it's about just being clear. Clarity matters to me. I don't do a lot of fluff. That's not my style.
Hmm.
So I think for me personally, that's the case. Now, I would say to tech leaders, for other superintendents, it could be a focus on what the board might think is appropriate, or what like the board might think is kind of glitzy, next generation, something new and cutting edge. I would say for other administrators, it might be something for them to lay claim to say, hey, we're partnering with this firm and we brought this firm here to put it on my resume so I can leave to go to the next place. There are all these types of reasons, to be honest, that they make
Yeah.
these decisions. I don't know that in fact, they're not always student focused and student centered. So I think the best superintendents, that's how they make decisions. And I think if the companies focus in that space around closing gaps and admitting honestly where the gaps are and where they can help, and it's not going to be easy, and we're going to have some technical barriers like we had, and Dr. Sheehy was able to work through that with Elevate K-12 at the time, now Full Minds, and so she thinks the world of the team.
I laugh because I was on a call maybe like 6 months ago where I said to a new leader, like, just so you know, things will go wrong. And the leader was like, and I was like, of course they're going to go wrong. Things,
Yeah.
we're talking about people and technology, and we have to be aware that you want to be with a partner who's going to admit that and also who will be flexible enough to work through those problems with you. So I laugh when you say that because it's not everybody's mindset. You'd be surprised. I want to make sure we talk about one more topic before we get to winding up. And I know we're kind of getting close to time here, but Ohio has done a phenomenal job of leading the charge in AI innovation. I know Shannon Cox and Candace Sears and Brett Rower and some dear friends in your community very, very well. And I've been really just impressed and overwhelmed with the level of kind of like fortitude to chart this path that is mostly unknown. Dayton is doing great work. Brag about that for a second. Tell us about the innovation happening in Dayton as it relates to immersion technologies.
Recently, as in yesterday, we just co-led with Sinclair Community College a 3T summit where most of the presenters were from DPS, where we had several classes, module sessions, so to speak, around the work that we're doing here with artificial intelligence, with Hey being one of those sessions that I had a chance to sit down and see a little bit of, which is our plan to pilot personalized bots for all 2,500 employees. I think this came to be, so to speak, because I have certain work hours, and the people who work closest to me know that system. It's early, it's late, it's all the time. And it's also every weekend. And I typically come here and I go upstairs and I sit in my office and I go through and I read things that I don't get a chance to read during the week. And everything you read, it's got something dealing with AI in it, right? And so I would read all these periodicals, journals, notes, emails, offers to be AI partners. And I would write a note on them and would make notes and highlight them. And I would send them to a guy named Dr. Kurtz Miller. He is the director of science for K-12, specifically 612. However, he has other interests. The people who work for me, they usually are assigned some other thing to research or do in addition to their job, like something philosophical or technical. So he's the AI person. So we start this AI committee within the confines of the technology steering committee, but this AI committee is exploratory, and we go through a process of exploring different, shall we say, platforms to use. So we currently just finished another pilot at the alternative school working on a bot with children to check on their social emotional health. And so we just finished an article with NPR about that, which I thought was amazing. We continue to work through school AI. That's our AI for children, so to speak. And I mentioned earlier about going district-wide with students having, I mean, everyone, adults having their own personal AI bot. I think for us, it's a matter of not if, but when it's here. And it's emerging so quickly and changing so fast, you want to constantly be in that space. I just was at an AI summit for district technology leaders last Thursday at Sinclair. I was invited. And so I went to go listen to see what other districts are saying and doing about their artificial intelligence policy, which in Ohio is mandated to be done by June 30th, I think it is.
Right. Yeah.
So, whenever there's space like that and whenever I have time, I try to commit to being there. But if I can't, Dr. Miller, he loves this part of his job. He's always there. So I think of the major urban districts, I know for a fact we're the state's leader. And when I listen to other districts that are suburban too, they're still wrapping their heads around how to move forward. And some of them, their boards are even stopping them because there's a political component to this too.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
some of the more conservative and I think reactionary uh, spaces in Ohio and around the country are putting up barriers to the use of artificial intelligence. They want us to go back to typewriters and horse and buggies. So we're certainly, shall we say, philosophically moving in a rapid direction forward, artificial intelligence at the center.
It is really exciting, and I am excited to read that or see that NPR piece that you just referred to. I I agree. The wave of the future is here. We are living it.
Mhm.
And I think when folks are asking to kind of move back to paper and pencil completely, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and that never works out for anybody.
Absolutely.
So, David, as our final question, I'm going to ask you, yeah, do you want to add something else?
Yeah, chalkboard maybe.
So
Yeah.
messy, so messy. As our final question, I'm going to ask you what advice you would give a teacher starting their career today.
I would say to that teacher, there's a book called 5 Days of School. I think that's the title, by Harry Wong. I think Wong is Wang, I believe, Harry Wong. Actually, it's the First Days of School, Harry Wong. And
Yeah.
the book used to be green, then it became white, but the letters are like in like 14 font, 16 font, and the book's kind of thick, but it's really not because the pages are glossy and they're in half pages. And that's one of the most seminal books I've ever read as an educator. It taught me so much about what to expect when I walked in the school building to become a school teacher in my first year. All the classes I'd taken and learned during that year of going back to get my certificate, that one book, they could have just given me that. In fact, I still remember chapter 7, which was the attire for teachers. And I remember as a first year teacher having a shirt and tie on every day. I didn't have enough money at the time to buy suits like now, but I had a shirt and tie on every day.
I love it. I read that book too. And I remember it being extremely formative. It was so practical.
Yes.
Often what you're learning in school is so philosophical. You're learning like, oh, here's how the brain works and here's how we acquire and scaffold. But that's important. What I actually needed as a brand new teacher was how do I get my kids to line up?
Yeah,
Like,
that's in there.
I remember.
How do I
Oh,
how do I set up my grade book? That's in there.
yes, yes.
How do I set my room up? That's in there. What am I do? What are the configurations of my desk and like what are my choices and options? That's in there. So yeah, I would. This is my 30th year, and I can see that book like as if I was reading it yesterday.
Dr. David Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing all the goodness that's happening in Dayton Public Schools, but also your philosophy and how you're enacting real change in public education. It is such a pleasure to have interviewed you.
Well, thank you so much. I've had a lot of fun on this podcast. We do a lot of them, but this one did seem, just as you said, Haley, just like a conversation. And it gave us an opportunity to spotlight not just Dayton Public Schools, but I'm also a defender of public education writ large. So I would say that most people attend public schools. Most of our senators and congressmen are public schools at the state and local and federal level. Most people that are doing great things are public school graduates. Not to say that other people who didn't go to public schools can't be great, but my point is that yeah, this is an opportunity to showcase public schools through Dayton, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody for tuning in today. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.